Good morning and welcome to Memoirs of a Thinking Man. Today we're going to be looking at has the role of oil changed the lessons of the Middle East? In 1908, oil was struck in Persia, modern day Iran, and the world's perception of the Middle East began to shift. What had long been revered as the cradle of civilization and a spiritual crossroads where prophets walked, empires arose, and God called a man named Abraham was suddenly recast in the eyes of the world as a battleground for economic power. Beneath its ancient stands lay a new treasure, oil. And with that discovery, the interest of kings and corporations converged on the region, not to pray, but to drill. The question is not just oil, what oil has done to the Middle East, but whether it has changed the lessons we are meant to learn from this land of divine promise and human conflict. Has oil, this black gold, altered the enduring lessons withdrawn from the Middle East, or has it merely revealed them more clearly? Today we're going to explore how oil has influenced modern perceptions of the Middle East and whether it has changed or reinforced biblical and historical truths about power, dependence, and peace. The Middle East is the birthplace of Abrahamic religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, a region of deserts and rivers, tribal alliances and imperial conquests, Assyria, Babylon, Persia, and Rome. Genesis 12:1 to 3 says, "The Lord had said to Abram, Go from your country, your people, and your father's household to the land I will show you. I will make you into a great nation, and I will bless you. I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you, I will curse. And all peoples on earth will be blessed through you." This opening paragraph constitutes the first expression of God's great promise to Abraham, what is known as the Abrahamic covenant. This covenant consists of three provisions. 1. Land, at this point generally identified as the land of Canaan. The content and borders now, which are increasingly specified throughout the Pentateuch, culminating in the detailed description in Numbers 34:1 to 12. 2. A great nation, in which the word translated nation, or goy, is typically applied to the Gentile nations and only rarely to Israel. Typically, the term am, or people, is used for Israel. This hinting at God's broader human-centered purpose in bestowing this covenant. And 3. Blessing, given the most space in God's declaration, thereby bearing out its preeminence among the provisions. To emphasize the importance of the blessing, the phrase, "and I will bless you," occurs in the exact middle of God's utterance, the 14th of 27 words, as well as in the various circumstances in which that blessing will be applied. These circumstances are threefold and increasingly expansive to Abraham, his descendants, and all the families of the earth. The term families generally denote extended families, a living patriarch, and all the members of his household by blood or marriage. God's love is seeking to push his blessing as far as his justice will allow. God calls Abram from this region, promising to bless all nations through him, a land marked by both divine calling and human struggle. The lesson here is that human history is shaped by divine promises and human ambition. Oil was discovered in Saudi Arabia in 1938. Kuwait, Iraq, and Iran made the region central to global economies. Western nations, especially the US and Britain, entered into long-term alliances and conflicts over energy security. The 1973 oil embargo by OPEC sent shockwaves across the globe. Practically overnight, gas stations from New York to London ran dry. Families waited in long fuel lines, sometimes for hours, only to find empty pumps. Inflation soared, governments panicked, and the world learned a hard lesson. A few oil-producing nations could shift the balance of power with a single decision. What emerged was not just an energy crisis. It was a new geopolitical chessboard where oil became the kingmaker and every move had global consequences. The lesson here is that earthly power, economic or military, follows the flow of scarce resources. But is this new? In Habakkuk 2, 5-6 we read, "Indeed, wine betrays him. He is arrogant and never at rest, because he enlarges his appetite like Sheol." In contrast to the righteous, the Babylonians were haughty, foolishly proud, and seemingly unaware that wine betrays them. It drove their appetite for conquest, like Sheol and death. They were never satisfied in the pursuit of peoples to conquer. In order to fully understand the meaning and significance of this verse, it is important to explore the context in which it was written. The book of Habakkuk was written during a time of moral and spiritual decay in Judah. The prophet Habakkuk is troubled by the violence, injustice, and wickedness that he sees around him, and he cries out to God for answers. God responds to Habakkuk, revealing his plan to bring judgment upon the wicked and restore justice to the land. The verse in question is part of God's response to Habakkuk's concerns. The verse begins with a warning that those who engage in greed and exploitation will face judgment. The use of the word parable suggests that this warning will be expressed through a story or proverb that taunts and ridicules the wrongdoer. The use of the word woe emphasizes the seriousness of the situation and conveys a sense of impending doom. The verse then goes on to describe the specific actions that will bring about this judgment, namely increasing that which is not rightfully theirs and loading themselves with heavy burdens represented by thick clay. One key theme that emerges from this verse is the concept of justice. God is warning the people of Judah that their unjust actions will not go unpunished. This theme is prevalent throughout the book of Habakkuk as the prophet grapples with the apparent triumph of evil over righteousness. The verse serves as a reminder that God is ultimately just and will bring about consequences for those who engage in exploitation and greed. Another theme that is present in this verse is the danger of materialism and wealth. The image of increasing that which is not rightfully theirs and ladening themselves with thick clay symbolizes the pursuit of material possessions and wealth at the expense of others. The use of the word thick clay may also allude to the heavy burdens that come with the pursuit of worldly possessions. This theme of the dangers of materialism is also found in other parts of the Bible, such as the teachings of Jesus in the New Testament. The verse also serves as a cautionary tale against the perils of greed and exploitation. It warns against the temptation to take advantage of others and acquire wealth through unjust means. This message is still relevant today as societies continue to grapple with issues of economic inequality, exploitation, and greed. The verse reminds us of the inherent danger of prioritizing material gain over justice and righteousness. In conclusion, Habakkuk 2:6 in the King James Version of the Bible delivers a powerful message about God's justice, the dangers of materialism, and the consequences of greed and exploitation. The verse speaks to the timeless themes of justice, morality, and the consequences of our actions. It serves as a reminder of the importance of living with integrity and seeking righteousness in all aspects of life. This verse continues to resonate with believers as a call to uphold justice and righteousness in a world where greed and exploitation still persist. Oil, like wine, can intoxicate nations, creating addiction, pride, and exploitation. Saddam Hussein's 1990 invasion of Kuwait wasn't just about politics, it was about control over oil fields. Just as Babylon sought to control trade routes and resources, so today nations seek influence through energy. The lesson here is that the idols may change from gold statues to oil rigs, but the human heart remains the same. Many oil-rich Middle Eastern nations have gained immense wealth, but at a cost. Internal inequality, external conflict, environmental harm. Deuteronomy 8:17-18 we read, "You may say to yourself, my power and the strength of my hands have produced this wealth for me. But remember the Lord your God, and thou say in thine heart." These words are in connection with the former part of the "and thou forget the Lord thy God." The author and giver of all the good things enjoyed and think within themselves, though they might not express it in words at length. My power and the might of mine hand hath gotten me this wealth. So ascribing that to themselves, their labour and diligence, which ought to be ascribed to the bounty and blessing of God. But thou shalt remember the Lord thy God, that he was the author of their things, the God of their lives and mercies, what great and good things he had done for them in Egypt and in the wilderness, and particularly in putting them into the possession of such a fruitful country, abounding with all that heart could wish for. For it is he that giveth thee power to get wealth. For though men may have seeming opportunities for getting wealth, may have capacities for the management of business, for the acquisition of it, and may not be wanting in diligence and industry, yet may not attain it. It is the blessing of God that makes rich, and to that it should be imputed whenever it is enjoyed, that he may establish his covenant which he swore unto thy fathers, as it is this day, that he would give the land of Canaan to their seed, and make them a rich and flourishing people, as they would be, and were when possessed of the land, which is supposed throughout this discourse. Economists speak of the resource curse, a tragic pattern where nations rich in natural resources often suffer from greater corruption, authoritarianism, and internal conflict. Wealth, instead of blessing, becomes a breeding ground for instability. This mirrors biblical warnings. Riches without righteousness lead to ruin. As Moses warned in Deuteronomy 8:13-14, when your herds and flocks grow large and your silver and gold increase, then your heart will become proud and you will forget the Lord your God. Oil has brought great wealth to parts of the Middle East, but without justice, humility, and godly leadership, it has too often deepened the wounds of power rather than healed them. The lesson here is that oil has not changed the Middle East story. It has amplified the consequences of trust misplaced in anything other than God. In Isaiah 19:23-25, we see a vision where Egypt, Assyria, and Israel worship the Lord together. We read, "In that day there will be a highway from Egypt to Assyria. The Assyrians will go to Egypt and the Egyptians to Assyria. The Egyptians and Assyrians will worship together. In that day Israel will be the third, along with Egypt and Assyria, a blessing on the earth. The Lord Almighty will bless them, saying, Blessed be Egypt my people, Assyria my handiwork, and Israel my inheritance." The next section describes the millennial peace between Assyria, Egypt, and Israel, when the Messiah Jesus returns and establishes his earthly kingdom. These three nations will be united in worship of the Lord. The turning of Egypt and Assyria to the Lord represents another affirmation of God's coming triumph. Israel need not fear these other national powers. Instead, Israel must wait for the nations to recognize God's authority. They must focus on remaining faithful to God rather than making political alliances. God will bring unprecedented peace through the unification of the nations in worship of Him. The Bible envisions peace among these ancient enemies, not through oil deals, but through spiritual reconciliation. In recent years, we've witnessed small but hopeful steps toward peace, most notably the Abraham Accords, where several Arab nations normalized relations with Israel. These moments of diplomacy are significant, like cracks of light breaking through a long night. Yet as meaningful as these treaties are, they remain fragile. True and lasting peace in the Middle East will not come from signatures on paper alone. Scripture reminds us that only the Prince of Peace can break the cycle of enmity and bring healing to ancient wounds. As Isaiah prophesied, one day Egypt, Assyria, and Israel will worship together, not by human negotiation, but by divine renewal. The lesson here is that the Middle East's hope never lay in oil, but in God's redemptive plan. Oil has made the Middle East globally significant in a new way, but it hasn't changed its spiritual core. Power struggles continue, borders shift, but the heart of the issue remains: who will we trust? Do not place your faith in wealth, control, or material gain. Learn from the Middle East not only its history, but its destiny in God's redemptive story. In Psalm 27 we read, "Some trust in chariots and some in horses, but we trust in the name of the Lord our